April 19, 1945, Hopkins County, Texas. Sheriff Tom Harlow stood at his office window watching a German woman prisoner sweep the courthouse steps in the dying light of a West Texas afternoon. The broom handle scraped rhythmically against stone. Dust rose in amber clouds. Her name was Greta Müller. She had been captured in North Africa, serving as a Wehrmacht nurse. He had been a lawman for 12 years, steady as oak, married to duty. Neither of them knew that in 3 months, Army intelligence would receive an anonymous letter that would turn their world inside out. Before we continue, if you're enjoying this story of courage against impossible odds, hit that like button and subscribe to WWW2 Tales for more untold stories from the Second World War. Drop a comment and let us know where you're watching from, whether you're in Texas, Germany, or anywhere else in the world. Your support keeps these forgotten stories alive. The heat that summer was merciless. It pressed down on Hopkins County like an iron, turning the red dirt to powder, making the air shimmer above the blacktop roads. Tom was 41, unmarried, a man whose father and grandfather had worn the same badge before him. People said the Harlows were born with badges instead of hearts. But as Tom watched Greta Müller pause at the top of the courthouse steps, wiping her brow with the back of her hand, something shifted inside him, something he had no name for, something that would cost him everything. And in that moment, watching a woman who was supposed to be his enemy, Tom Harlow realized that the war had found a way to reach even the remote corners of West Texas, not with bombs or bullets, but with something far more dangerous. The story began long before that April afternoon. It began in 1943, when the first German prisoners of war arrived at Camp Hearne, 30 miles east of Hopkins County. Thousands of them captured in Tunisia, Sicily, and France. The camp sprawled across the pine woods, guard towers rising above the trees like watchful sentries. Most Americans had never seen a German soldier up close. The propaganda posters showed fanged monsters, burning cities, bayonets dripping blood. But the men who stepped off the trains looked like anyone else. Tired, thin, young. By 1945, the prisoner of war program had evolved into something unexpected. With American men overseas, labor was desperately scarce. The military began contracting POWs to local businesses under armed guard. They picked cotton, harvested timber, repaired roads. The pay went into canteen accounts where prisoners could buy cigarettes, chocolate, writing paper. It was a strange arrangement. The enemy, working American fields, sleeping in American camps, eating American food. That spring, the Army expanded the program to include women. There weren't many, perhaps 200 across all of Texas. Most had been captured in North Africa, where they served as nurses, radio operators, clerks attached to Rommel's Africa Corps. The Geneva Convention was clear. Prisoners must be treated humanely, housed separately by sex, given work appropriate to their abilities. Hopkins County had neither hospital nor laundry large enough to warrant the paperwork. What it had was a courthouse that needed cleaning, a jail that needed cooking, and a sheriff known for fairness who agreed to supervise 2 women prisoners 3 days a week. The first was Margot, a broad-shouldered woman in her 50s who spoke no English and scrubbed floors like she was washing away sins. The second was Greta. She arrived on a Tuesday morning in April. 2 MPs brought her in a jeep, handed Tom the paperwork, and left. She stood in the doorway of his office, blinking in the sudden shade after the bright drive. 28 years old, slender, dark blonde hair pulled back in a regulation knot. She wore the standard POW uniform, blue denim work dress with PW stenciled in white across the back, canvas shoes, no jewelry. Her eyes were gray-green, the color of sage after rain. Tom explained her duties. Helping Mrs. Patterson in the courthouse kitchen 3 days a week, cooking for the staff, keeping things clean. Any trouble, any attempt to leave, she would go straight back to Hearne. She nodded, said she understood. Her accent was thick but clear. She had learned English in school before the war. What struck Tom was her eyes. Most prisoners looked at the floor, the wall, anywhere but directly at their captors. Not Greta. There was something in her gaze that wasn't defiance exactly, but not submission either. Recognition, perhaps. One human being seeing another. Tom looked away first. The work was simple. Mrs. Patterson, the courthouse cook, was 67 and grateful for help. Greta learned the routines quickly. Coffee at 7, lunch at noon, keeping the big kitchen spotless. She moved with precision, the way nurses move, efficient and careful. She didn't speak unless spoken to. She didn't complain. But Tom couldn't help noticing other things. The way she hummed quietly while washing dishes, melodies he didn't recognize. The way she flinched at sudden noises. A door slamming, a truck backfiring. The way she paused sometimes, staring out the kitchen window at the endless Texas sky, and something in her face looked like drowning. 3 weeks passed, then 4. One afternoon in May, Tom brought paperwork to the kitchen and found Greta standing at the window. She didn't hear him enter. Her reflection in the glass showed tears running silent down her face. He cleared his throat. She spun, wiping her eyes quickly, standing at attention. She apologized, said she was remembering. Tom should have left, should have reminded her that sentiment was irrelevant, that she was a prisoner and he was her keeper. Instead, he heard himself ask what she was remembering. She hesitated, then quietly told him about her brother. He would be 19 now. He had been conscripted in 1943. Infantry. Russia. She hadn't heard from him in 18 months. The Ostfront. The Eastern Front. Even in Texas, people knew what that meant. Frozen mud and endless dying. Tom said he was sorry. Meant it. Greta looked at him with surprise. She said he was the first American who had said that to her. War makes orphans of us all, Tom said. One way or another. Something shifted in the air between them. Small as a breath, but real. That evening, Tom sat on his porch as the sun descended in a blaze of copper and gold. He tried to read the newspaper but found himself thinking about a German woman crying in his courthouse kitchen, about a brother lost in snow and smoke, about the way grief looked the same in any language. Summer arrived like a hammer. The temperature climbed past 100 and stayed there. The courthouse kitchen became an oven, heat radiating from the big iron stove even with all the windows open. Mrs. Patterson went home early most days, unable to bear the heat. That left Greta and Tom as the only souls in the building after 3 o'clock. He found reasons to stay. Paperwork, he told himself. Reports to file. But the truth was simpler and more complicated. He wanted to hear her voice. They began talking. Small things at first. She asked about Texas. He asked about Germany. She told him about growing up in Bremen, a port city on the North Sea. About the smell of salt water and ship diesel. About working at the hospital when the war started. He told her about his father teaching him to track deer. About the year the drought killed every crop in the county. About the loneliness of being the man everyone trusted, but no one truly knew. She laughed once, surprised by something he said about a rooster that terrorized the previous sheriff. The sound was bright and sudden, like water in the desert. Tom realized he hadn't heard a woman laugh in his presence for years. The weeks folded into each other. Heat and routine and something else growing beneath the surface like roots searching for water. Tom brought her books from his house. She taught him German phrases, laughing at his pronunciation. They discussed philosophy, religion, the future of a world emerging from war. She was intelligent, educated, curious. He was thoughtful, measured, kinder than his reputation suggested. One evening in July, as Greta prepared to leave, Tom handed her a folded piece of paper. She asked what it was. He told her it was a letter he had written to the Red Cross, inquiring about her brother. He had a contact there. It was a long shot, but still. Greta stared at the paper in her hand. When she looked up, her eyes were bright with unshed tears. Because it's the right thing to do, he said. But what he thought was different. Because I cannot stop thinking about you. Because when you are gone, the courthouse feels like a tomb. Because somewhere along the way, you stopped being a prisoner and became something I have no words for. 3 weeks later, the Red Cross responded. Tom walked to the kitchen where Greta was peeling potatoes. He handed her the paper without speaking. She read. Her hands began to shake. "He is alive," she whispered, "in a Soviet camp. Alive." She looked up at Tom, and in her eyes he saw something that made his heart break and sing simultaneously. She thanked him, her voice breaking. Tom turned to leave, to restore the proper order of things. Tom. His first name. She had never used it before. He stopped. "I need you to know," Greta said, and her voice was steady now, "that you have given me back hope. Not just about my brother. About everything. About people. About the possibility that the world is not only cruelty." Tom stood with his back to her, his hand on the doorframe. His throat was tight. Greta said she knew they couldn't. She knew what they were. But she wanted him to know. The cicadas sang outside. Tom turned and looked at this woman who had somehow, impossibly, become the fixed point around which his days revolved. He said he knew. God help him, he knew. That evening, as the sun descended, Tom sat on his porch and understood with perfect clarity that he was in love with Greta Müller, German prisoner of war, enemy of his country, and that there was no path forward that didn't end in ruin. He loved her anyway. August burned across Texas like revelation. The war in Europe had ended in May, but the Pacific Theater raged on. Hopkins County sent care packages to the boys in Okinawa. In the courthouse kitchen, Tom and Greta existed in a careful bubble of propriety and longing. They didn't touch. They didn't speak of what hung between them like summer lightning. But anyone with eyes could have seen it. Mrs. Patterson noticed. One afternoon, she pulled Tom aside. "You be careful, Tom," she said quietly. "People talk." Tom understood. Hopkins County was patriotic to its bones. 347 men from the county were serving overseas. 22 had died. The idea of a lawman fraternizing with a German prisoner would be seen as betrayal. Treason of the heart. "I haven't done anything wrong," Tom said. "Not yet," Mrs. Patterson said, "but I see how you look at her. And Tom, that way lies nothing but pain." In September, the war ended. Japan surrendered. The world erupted in celebration. But for the POWs, uncertainty loomed. Repatriation to Germany, certainly. But when? And to what? Their country was rubble and occupation zones. Greta said nothing about the future. But Tom saw the fear in her eyes. Bremen was in the British zone. Everything she knew had likely been destroyed. Her brother was in Soviet hands. She had no family left except him, no home to return to. "What will you do?" Tom asked one evening as they stood in the empty kitchen. "I do not know," Greta said. "Wait for orders. Hope. Pray, perhaps, though I am not sure God listens anymore." "I listen," Tom said quietly. Greta turned to him. "What are you saying?" Tom hadn't planned this, but the words came anyway. "Marry me. Stay here in Texas with me." The silence that followed was absolute. "You cannot mean this," Greta whispered. "I've never meant anything more in my life. Tom, I am a prisoner, an enemy. They will not allow it. Your community will not forgive it. You will lose everything." "I've already lost everything that matters," Tom said. "If you go back to Germany, if I never see you again, I will spend the rest of my life as half a person." He stepped closer. "I love you, Greta. I love you so much it terrifies me." Tears spilled down her face. "I love you too. I have tried not to. But I love you, Tom Harlow, and I do not know how to stop." "Then don't stop," Tom said. "Let me find a way." Greta reached up and touched his face. "You are a good man. Better than you believe. Will you marry me?" Tom asked again. "If I can find a way, will you say yes?" "Yes," Greta whispered. "Yes." The next morning, Tom began making calls. He started with the camp commander at Fannin, Colonel Morrison. Morrison listened and was silent for a long time. "Sheriff, are you out of your mind?" "The regulations on this are Byzantine," Morrison said. "You'd need approval from Washington. Background checks, investigations. And that's assuming the Army doesn't court-martial you for fraternization first. Is it possible? There have been cases, not many. The Army hates it. But if everything is done properly, if there's no impropriety, no breach of security, and if the prisoner has a clean record. It's a long shot, Tom. A very long shot." "I'll take those odds," Tom said. Over the next 6 weeks, Tom navigated a labyrinth of military bureaucracy. He filed forms, submitted to interviews, allowed investigators to comb through his entire life. They questioned everyone. They reviewed Greta's record, her capture, her service, her conduct in captivity. They interviewed her repeatedly, searching for any evidence of coercion. Through it all, Tom and Greta maintained strict professional distance when others were present. But in the few moments they had alone, they sustained each other with whispered assurances and shared glances. In October, an anonymous letter arrived at Army Intelligence Headquarters in San Antonio. It claimed that Sheriff Tom Harlow had been engaged in an inappropriate relationship with a German POW, that security had been compromised, that the situation was a scandal waiting to erupt. The investigation intensified. 2 officers from intelligence arrived in Hopkins County unannounced. Tom stood in his office while they interrogated him. "Have you at any time been intimate with prisoner Miller?" "No." "Have you given her special treatment?" "I wrote a letter to the Red Cross about her brother." "That's all." "You've requested permission to marry her." That suggests a relationship that goes beyond proper boundaries. "I love her," Tom said simply. "That's not a crime. And I've done nothing improper. Check every record. You'll find I've followed every regulation to the letter. Love is not the issue, Sheriff. The optics are. The American public will not understand." "Then they'll have to try," Tom said. "I'm not breaking any laws. I'm trying to do this the right way." The investigation dragged on through November. Tom barely slept. He lost weight. The story leaked to local papers. Hopkins County Sheriff seeks to marry German POW. The reaction was swift and divided. Some were outraged, others sympathetic. Letters poured in, some supporting Tom, others demanding his resignation. The county commissioners called an emergency meeting. Tom stood before them. "Gentlemen," he said, "I understand your concerns. But we fought a war to defend freedom, the freedom to love who we choose. Greta Muller is not our enemy. She was a nurse who healed people. If we cannot show compassion to someone like her, what did we win?" The vote was close, but they allowed him to remain sheriff, pending the Army's decision. In December, the letter came, bearing the seal of the United States Army. Tom opened it slowly, his hands shaking. Permission granted. He read it 3 times. Permission granted, subject to conditions. 1 year of supervision, regular check-ins, completion of repatriation procedures. But yes, they could marry. Tom sat down, face in his hands. He rarely cried, but he cried then. An hour later, he drove to Camp Fannin. Colonel Morrison met him at the gate. "You lucky son of a gun," Morrison said, grinning. Greta walked across the compound, 2 guards beside her. When she saw Tom, she stopped. He held up the letter. They said yes. For a moment, she didn't move. Then she ran. The guards called out, but Tom caught her as she crashed into his arms, laughing and crying. "We can marry," she asked. "We can marry," he said. They wed 3 weeks later, January the 5th, 1946, in a small Lutheran church. Morrison attended, along with Mrs. Patterson, 2 deputies, and a few townspeople. The pastor, who had lost a son at Normandy, agreed to the ceremony after meeting Greta. She wore a simple gray dress and carried white roses. Tom wore his uniform. When the pastor said, "You may kiss your bride," Tom lifted her chin and kissed her. It was their first kiss, tasting of tears and hope and the future opening like a door. That night, Tom built a fire. "How does it feel?" he asked. "To be free? Strange," Greta said. "For so long, I was the enemy. Now I am a wife. It's like waking from a dream." "This is real," Tom said, taking her hand. The first year was hard. Greta faced suspicion, cold shoulders, hostility. Women crossed the street. Shopkeepers served her last. Children called her Nazi. Tom stood beside her through all of it. When someone painted a swastika on their door, he made the culprit repaint the house. Slowly, the town accepted she wasn't leaving. In 1947, Greta became a U.S. citizen in the same courthouse where she'd once peeled potatoes as a prisoner. When she raised her hand, Tom watched, proud. They had 3 children, Sarah, Robert, and James, who grew up knowing that love could cross any border. Tom served as sheriff until 1962. Greta became known for her garden, her kindness, her work with immigrants. Tom died in 1989, Greta in 1995. On her bedside table lay the letter he'd written in 1945, the one that changed everything. Their shared headstone reads, Thomas Harlow, 1904-1989. Greta Muller, Harlow, 1917-1995. Love knows no borders. Today, a marker outside the Hopkins County Courthouse tells their story, 2 people proving that even in war's shadow, love remains the most stubborn, unreasonable, and transformative force on earth.